All right. Welcome in to this episode of Farzcast. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope you guys have enjoyed the past couple of weeks without the podcast. I'm very excited to bring the podcast back after a short hiatus. Got some really exciting guests coming up in the next couple of weeks. So I hope you guys are very excited. And by the way, got to give you guys a big thank you. For those of you who follow me on social media, you guys know kind of an urgent matter in my family. My dad stayed overnight at the hospital. Nothing too serious, thank goodness, but he's doing a lot better. A lot of you guys have been asking, so thank you guys so much for that. Doing great as ever. So just enjoying the craziness that was carried over from 2020, but things are starting to pick up a bit. Coming up on the podcast, for those of you guys watching through Facebook, later today at 1:30, I'm going to be talking to Freddie Coleman of ESPN. I'm a huge ESPN Radio, to be specific. Very big fan of Freddie. He'll be coming on later today. But for right now, you guys can see him on the screen right now. If you're watching the YouTube version or the Facebook version, Jimmy Chavez. He is the women's basketball announcer for the Kansas Jayhawks. I met Jimmy years ago. Super nice guy and great at what he does. And I'm excited to talk to him, his journey to where he is now. Jimmy Chavez, welcome into Farzcast, brother.
Hi, now that I know that Freddie's coming up in a little bit, I don't even feel like the JV. I feel like the freshman, B team right now compared to having Freddie on in a little bit, because Freddie's the man. I love Freddie. So I guess I'll just fill in some time with you. I'm good. How are you?
Good, man. Hey, everyone's great in their own little world, their own realm. So don't sell yourself short. Look, man, I'm a big fan of you and what you've done, what you're doing now. I'm a bigger fan of you as a person. One of the nicest people you'll ever come across. I remember. So to give people an understanding, and I want to give you an opportunity to kind of give us your backstory, because I know a little bit. I know you've done some stuff with Scout and Fox Sports. But I was a student at KU. I transferred from Johnson County Community College from 2012 to 2014. That's when I attended KU. And I remember you were in the media covering KU sports, and we just kind of connected there. And you've been so nice to me, always giving me advice, always willing to answer any questions I had. And same with other students that were there attending as members of the media.
I felt like I had more in common with you guys than all the grown-ups in there. They'd all start talking about their golf game. I was like, okay, this is boring. This sucks. I don't care. I was like, I don't play golf, so I'd rather talk to the college students and hear their stories.
Well,
what's that? You had a great game of beer pong. Hey, let's talk. They're over there talking about who slices what and bogeys what, and tell me about your story. Yeah.
The only golfing I've ever done and enjoyed was Topgolf. Have you ever done that?
I have once, actually. We were playing being women's basketball at KU, we were playing in a tournament right before Christmas a couple years ago, and we were supposed to fly out of McCarran at 10 o'clock in the morning. And I was excited to get out of there, not because Vegas is terrible. No. It was right before Christmas. I wanted to come home. I'd been away for 5 days, and that's just a lot. And I won money on the first day, and I promptly walked across the street to a DSW and bought a pair of shoes. And so I was like, I won. I can just go home now. We're good. There's nothing more. So we're supposed to fly out of McCarran, and the flight is delayed. And long story short with that, we didn't actually end up leaving Vegas until about 6 that evening. So the director of ops, she was the best at just being able to improvise, and said, all right, we have cars. We're going to go kill the day at Topgolf. And so we had lunch and did that. And that's the only time I've been. I was always a great putt player, but yes, that's not going to go when all these, 50-year-old journalists are over there talking about what they played at Alvamar. And I'm just like, one time I hit a hole in one at Destin through a windmill, and that was 80-degree dew point. So I had all the tummy sweat going, and I actually put my phone on and put the Masters music on so that my wife could record as I shot it, and not expecting anything. And I hit a hole in one, and the only thing was missing was Uncle Vern to, yes, sir. And so, that's the extent of my golf game. So yes, that's why I related to all you guys a lot more. I enjoyed the company much more. It made me feel younger.
Oh, that's good. That's good to hear. Man, listen, I've talked to a couple of people in this industry in sports media, people who have come a long way. Some people have an interesting road to sports media. You have this really the traditional path where you went to some small cities, places that people aren't really excited to go to, and you built your
Kill
way
your
up.
social life in your mid-20s, that's for sure.
Tell us how you started and how you got to being at Lawrence as the basketball announcer there.
Um, so in high school, I wanted to go to a journalism school, and so this is I graduated high school 20 years ago, so that kind of dates you. And and so I'm looking at schools that had good programs, and I- I'll be honest, Kansas was not on my list because I just wasn't thinking necessarily. I wouldn't say distance. It wasn't on my mind. And so I remember I happened to just stumble onto their website. I don't even know what exactly. Well, I take it back. I knew Kevin Harlan had gone there because he would always talk about it when he would call a game. He'd always get in a little Jayhawk, shout out. And I was like, if they produce someone like him, they must have a pretty good school. And so one of these days, it was actually a day much like this one, 40 degrees and rainy, and
Yeah.
in San Antonio, which doesn't happen too often. But anyway, so I was messing around the computer, and I stumble onto their website. And at that time, you still, for the most part, I'd say 90 to 95% of schools required that you could send in a thing and they would send you the booklet with the application and make you do it. That now you can just
Yeah.
easily do it. You can apply for college right now in your underwear and then go back to bed.
You can
And
do it all right here.
exactly, see what I mean? And I had just gotten a cell phone around that time. I was pretty proud when I could get the Sports Center theme as a ringer. That was
Yep.
considered big time. But so anyway, I see that you can apply. And I was like, well, that's convenient. More schools should do that. But I read a little more in the school. First, I see the pictures. I was like, oh, it looks a pretty campus. They have the fall pictures. I was like, well, let's look at their journalism school. And it was talking about the William Allen White School and where they'd sent interns and alums and all that. I was like, actually, this might be a pretty good school. I
Yeah.
need one more to add to my list anyway. So I say about dating myself, I take the phone cord out of the computer, plug it back into the phone, call dad at work, and I say, he picks up the phone. Already sounding like grumpy and curmudgeon-y, which is probably where I get it from. And he goes, what do you want? I was like, I need your credit card number, which is always a great way to start any conversation with dad. He's like, why the hell do you need my credit card number? And I said, well, I'm looking at colleges and I need one more to make my list, and I'm going to apply to Kansas. And he goes, we going to play basketball for Roy Williams? This was Roy's next to last year there. And I was like, no, they actually have a good journalism school. Then I go into salesman mode and I start recruiting him to give me his credit card number. I say, yeah, yada, yada, yada. They send people to ESPN, blah, blah, blah. I was like, oh, sounds good. I said, he goes, do I need to sign anything for you? I was like, no, that's the best part. You give me your credit card number. I can apply right here. You don't have to give me anything. And we'll see what I probably won't get in anyway, but I just need one more school to make my list of 5 or 6 or whatever it was. And all right. And so it's $50 fee. And I didn't think anything of it. I was like, well, whatever. I wrote it off. And it actually was the first school I heard back from that I got in. And I remember getting the envelope. And at the time I'm with my grandparents, and I remember getting the envelope, and it was a thick envelope. I was like, well, that's a lot of paper to tell me I didn't get in. I was like, and so anyway, I take it back to my room, whatever. And so then I was like, wait a minute, if it's thick, I do the whole thing with the light. I was like, get out of here. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding. Because I wasn't
It's a special
expecting that.
moment.
Well, and so I was kind of caught by surprise. I was like, wow, I got in there. So I remember telling my grandma and thinking she's going to be, oh, I'm proud of you, blah, blah. No, mothers have a way of knowing these things before. They've like a sixth sense. She already knew. I was like, well, you kind of just stole my thunder. Okay, I'll just go back and open up the rest of my mail. And it's like, all right, whatever. And anyway, so that's how I ended up at Kansas. And so going back to your question about the small towns and all that, first of all, I didn't know what I was getting into when I got to Kansas. And when I found out that they had student radio that did the games, that was huge. I honestly, I had no idea it went that far. I mean, it would have been even more of a slam dunk to apply had I known that. And actually the sports director for KJHK had spoke at our journalism 101 class my first semester there. And so I hear call games in Allen Fieldhouse. I was like, oh, what did he say? So I actually want to go up to him afterwards. I was like, did you say what I thought you said? Yeah, we're having a meeting Wednesday at 4. I was like, all right, well, and I can remember walking into that first meeting, and one of the guys who's still a really good friend of mine to this day goes, well, look at this, look at these FNGs, and walking in here, and it could be a little intimidating, and I fit right in. It was just it ended up being almost serendipitous how I ended up there, and it ended up being best decision I could have made. I made a lot of lifelong friends. And so what got me down the whole small town path is there are a lot of different ways to carve the path to get in with these jobs. And Fred White, the late Fred White, became a really good friend and mentor to me. And he was the best at the sports seminar that the KAB put on.
Yeah.
In the Crown Club or the old Crown Club before, obviously they remodeled the stadium or renovated, whatever. And so not everyone, they didn't have to be this way. And he would say, well, if you guys ever need anything, just email me. And so if we want to critique, and so we leave, I email him, and he says, mail him a tape. So I do. And I'm thinking, well, there's no way he's going to get back to me. And this is Fred White. He's busy. He's calling games. He's, running the Royals alumni deal. And it's Fred White. Like you're going to hear back from him. I get an email back from him on a Saturday in like 2004 as a junior. And he had a long critique of my stuff, and I was just blown away. And that struck a friendship that, I still remember at the Big 12 tournament in 2006, my friends and I are at the hotel bar in Dallas, and the bartender, the waitress comes up to us and says, the gentleman over there would like to buy you and your friends some beer. I'm like, who? And I look over, and he just gives the beer, the salute with the beer. I was like, no way, that's cool. Fred White bought us beer. I was like, we could have stopped there and I would have been good. Like, wow, what a great guy. He bought us beer in Dallas one time. Well, we stayed in touch. And so one day around that time, I sent him another email, and I asked him, please level with me, be honest. Do you think I should go into this? Because I have a choice. My degree's in TV and print. I could go into, I could go down the writing path, but I had more training in TV, and I had some great mentors on that side too. And I have a tape that I put together, obviously, for my TV2 class, so that it's time to make a decision what I want to do. And I know what I really want to do, but if he says I'm not good enough to do it, and I should really focus somewhere else, then fair enough. I respect that. And to his credit, he gave me some no BS fullbacks. I'm already thinking of football feedback. And I'll never forget that he said, it would be a travesty if you don't at least attempt, because you owe it to yourself. You're a phenomenal young play-by-play announcer, and in my opinion, one of the best to come out of your school in some time. And I'm not saying that to brag. I'm just that's what he said. And so, okay, then I guess we're going to do this. And it just so happened that my first radio job was working for him in Russell. And a lot of guys had gone the small town route. I know for a fact, Nate Bucati went to Moberly, Missouri, and that's just a bunch of other guys went to a lot of places. And we're talking like Wyatt Thompson, I know worked in Goodland and in Hayes early in his career. Dave Armstrong was in Hayes, and there's so many great announcers that cut their teeth in small markets. And Fred always used to say, you can drive up and down I-70 on a Friday night in the fall, and you'll hear some of the best play-by-play announcers, period, hands down. And I always thought of that when I was calling games there. And so from Russell to Colby, from Colby, after 2 years there, 2 years in Russell, ended up in Wichita. And Wichita is not through that, but actually where I ended up meeting my wife. And so then to Houston, and that was for a few months. And after that, got a call from a friend about covering recruiting and all that stuff for Scout, and that's what moved us back here. And it wasn't what I wanted to do, because I was a play-by-play guy, but I couldn't pass up the opportunity to be in it and cover stuff. And obviously that's where I met you and everyone else. It wasn't, I mean, it was an interesting time. It was, saw a lot of good basketball, obviously, a lot of good teams. And I mean, football has just been a train wreck for the past decade. And so, but still saw a lot of great athletes that played on that side too. And there was some memories there too. And always the hope that, okay, this is where they're going to get it right and turn it around. And I always tell people, even going back to school, I'm from Texas. I'm a football guy first. Always have been, always will be. I mean, there's, down there's football and there's spring football, and spring football is just as big as regular football. So I never missed a game at KU when I was there. I don't care how terrible the weather was. The only time I did leave early in school was actually the Northwestern game in 2003, because I had a friend visiting me from home, about 60 degrees, and we had the remnants of like a hurricane, but the Weather Channel said the rain was supposed to clear out by 6 o'clock. So he goes, should we take a jacket or anything? No, the Weather Channel says it's supposed to stop by 6. We'll be okay. It might be a light drizzle. Well, and plus I was doing a pregame show at the Crossing, rest in peace. And it's now the Orion. And so I got to do a pregame show, but then we'll stroll down to the game. It'll be good. And they're playing Northwestern. So it's a Big Ten team. And it's just like Caddyshack. Oh, the hard stuff's not going to come down for a while. And it started pouring and we're like freezing. I was actually also trying to do a tape to get cleared for football. So you can imagine I have a tape recorder and I have what once was boards, which are now disintegrating because it's pouring. And I'm like shivering as I didn't get cleared off that game. I actually ended up getting cleared off something else, like a high school game or something a week later when it wasn't raining. But anyway, we left at halftime because I finally told him, I said, we there's beer in my apartment. we can go back and just listen to the rest of the game on the radio. And so that's the only, but a whole bunch of us, we were loyal and a lot of our friends, and we always were. And the football is really good. And obviously what Coach Mangino had at that time, you always felt you had a chance, no matter who we played. We always had a chance. And, I remember in college, I did the BCS dollar signs game against Texas, and everyone's saying, oh, we're going to lose by 50. I said, I think we can win. And everyone looked at me like I was on drugs. I was like, I'm just telling you, he knew how to beat Texas at Oklahoma. They have a chance, and they were up 10 with 6.5 minutes to go. So it almost made me look. Now, a year later, I will say in the Kansas, I wrote that they had another chance again, and Texas beat them 66-14. And that was a national championship team that was just playing very pissed off against everybody. So, you can't win them all. You can't get them all right, but that's also why I'm not a gambler. So I lose way too much. But anyway, that's kind of how I went through my journey. And then in 2015, Brian Haney, who's been a friend of mine, actually one of my first friends I met. And I joke with him now. Yeah, we were friends when we both had dark hair, and which more so for Brian now, but I'm not far behind him. And I actually was about ready to just give up. Like one of my professors at KU, still a good friend to this day, said, man, if it wasn't for bad luck, you'd have no luck at all. And he didn't mean anything disrespectful. He just knew that I'd had a lot of bad breaks that come along the way. And I called Brian in the summer of 15 and I said, look, we've known each other a long time, and everything, bad stories and bad luck. And do you think I should just, maybe someone's trying to tell me it's not meant to be. And unfortunately we all lost Fred 2 years earlier. And I honestly, to this day, thought Fred was going to live forever. I mean, the guy had more energy at 70 something than I do now. And I'm 38. And, so I couldn't go to Fred, though I know exactly what he would say, and I asked Brian, and he said, hang in there. I'll tell you something. The women's job at KU is open, and, you should apply and use me as a reference. And I was like, well, whatever. All right, this is it. This is the last, if this doesn't happen, I'm done. I need to get on with my life. I'm 32 and it's obviously not happening. And life had changed for me by that point. I'd been married a couple years. And so where I'm at there versus where I was 5-6 years earlier is different. I have to think of more than myself. And I actually got the call back and interview and all that good stuff. And, rest was history. And I got hired in 15, and here it's been 6 seasons. And I still periodically, not, I don't forget, and you'll understand. And so will the others of us, like all of us, not just your time, but like my friends and the people I came up with. And um when you realize that and Brian understands this, especially now with his job, and at the time he was a tech. So
Oh, okay.
yeah, he wasn't back yet.
Oh, gotcha.
And so he was in Lubbock. But when you walk in there and you realize that you work for your alma mater, and you think of anytime I put on the headset, I think of all my friends that we called games together. I think of them and think every one of them would kill to be in this position. And so I try not to take it for granted, because there are a lot of really good damn people that come through that program. And I worked with a lot of them, and they're all just as deserving to sit there now as I'm nobody. I'm just the person who's sitting there now. There'll be someone else, and you're just a placeholder. And you were lucky enough, and especially since there was never any grand plans to go to the University of Kansas, and I never thought my life would take me to where it ends up becoming that big a part of my life. And then to one day work for them. And I joke, they're so kind to me, and the equipment people especially, they're the best.
Yeah.
I love them to death. They're such good friends. I feel humbled and sometimes embarrassed when they give me all my gear for the season, because you get new gear every year. And I joke, I'll never have to buy another KU article of clothing again. I mean, stuff that I would never buy in general, because I'm like, I can't justify spending whatever $100 on this or that, and little things like that you realize, man, I guess that I'm pretty lucky to be in this position, and I don't know how long I'll be there, and how long they'll have, but it the privilege has never been lost on me. And very often, especially this year, with just things that have happened, not just professionally, but personally, I've been very reflective of, you can remember the first time that you went in there. You can remember games you did in college. And it just, it's nice to tell these stories again, because it's not like I stop people on the street and say, hey, let me tell you about my story, but I just start remembering all of it. And the number one thing, and Chris Tyson told me one time, the men's basketball SID, I asked him about, this was a few years ago. He'd been there 10 years. I was like, what stands out when you think about all the time? I mean, I'm thinking he's going to say, well, Mario shot and that team. No, he just said the people. And and it always has stuck with me. It's the people. The fact that I'm talking to you right now, I talk to you, I think of all the people that you were in school with that I got to know, and seeing what they're doing with their lives and how they've grown. And I think that's another reason why I kind of took to a lot of you guys, because it made me remember, which at that time I wasn't that far away from. It was only a few years difference. And you start thinking of all those people that you came up with. And at the end of the day, it's something so simple as you miss them, because we grow up, we all grow apart, or we go on with our lives. And I really believe that we're all just passing through, kind of like ships in the night. And so that doesn't mean that you're not close to these people in the sense that, well, we're not friends anymore. It just means we all have our own journeys, and new people come in, old people leave, and you just picture all these people that you had a chance to cross paths with. And for me, it was the best. It's in a lot of ways, I'm there as a student, and even going forward, it's been kind of like Camelot. And I'm very thankful that I've at least had that. And it helps to remember that, to be grateful, because we tend to take all this for granted. We all do.
Yeah. Well, I think what's so interesting about your story, a lot of people might be listening, and, some of these details to where you go to, it's not the most thrilling story to tell. I mean, there's nothing exciting about small town Kansas.
Let me tell you about the Oasis and the Plains in Colby. That's a good cup of coffee.
Have you ever seen the show Last Chance U on Netflix?
I have. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the ones that took place in Kansas, not just because they were in Kansas, but I just thought that was a much more entertaining season. I've gotten to actually know Jason Brown, the former head coach. He and I are good friends. And I recently had Jeff Carpenter, who was featured a lot on that show. I mean, he's in Independence, Kansas, which I didn't even know there was an Independence, Kansas. I thought the only Independence in this area was in Independence, Missouri.
I learned that too a while back.
It's funny. I remember I was at Johnson County Community College and we were playing Independence. I'm like, oh, Independence, Missouri, cool.
All right.
They're like, no, Independence, Kansas. I'm like, I pull this out. I look up Independence on a map. Yeah, that's how I learned. But it's
I
funny.
used to joke, you name a town in Kansas, I probably called a game in it.
Yeah. But what's so interesting is, so a lot of people listening might not be in sports media. Maybe they're in the medical field or in the business field or something along those lines. They don't have to go through these small towns. I mean, you want to go work in Kansas City, Missouri as an account executive. Hey, there are probably a lot of jobs in that area. You want to go to Des Moines because maybe that's where you have a lot of family. Hey, there's a good chance maybe you can find a gig there. Whereas as a sports announcer, there's a path you got to go through. It's not easy. And there are a few people, and I was a little fortunate, and it wasn't a full-time job, it was part-time, but I got to stay here in Kansas City and, write for Bleacher Report online and work for 610 Sports part-time. Not everyone has that opportunity to
there's
be able
so
to
many
stay.
different paths. There's no one identical.
Yeah.
That's what makes it fascinating. You're like, well, what do you do? Well, anything.
Yeah,
Anything's
exactly.
possible.
And you were talking about some of your classmates too, and I'm thinking of, and I don't know how it is for, or how many classmates of yours you keep in touch with. You're a journalism major, I assume.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was too. Not every student that attended that was a part of KGHK studied journalism, but the people who I worked with when it was the Kansan or KUJH-TV or KGHK, for those who don't know, these are all the student-run media outlets at KU, or just journalism classmates in general. I don't know how it is for you, but I'd say 90 to 95% of my classmates, they either could never get in the journalism industry after college or they were in it and they got out of it, kind of like me. How has it been for you? How many people do you know that are still in the industry?
Actually, it's funny you say that. My wife and I were just talking about that a while back. Most of my stuff was done with the TV station. I did do the Kansan as well, but even then, I would say 95% got out. When it comes to print, some people went the small town radio or the small town deal. When it came to radio, there were some people that went the small town deal. And look, I'm not holier than thou. There are so many times I wanted to give up because I'll never forget. I had a boss in Colby. He was awesome. And he comes into my office when I was 25. Why? What the hell do you do for fun here? I was like, what do you do? And I tell him, well, I have a friend in Denver and I have friends in Wichita. Basically, I just hop in my car and my ass is on I-70 quite a bit. And that's basically what I did. And there were many times I thought, well, what if I had taken a different route to where I had a friend that started kind of the small jobs like here in Kansas City. And I thought, man, my life had been better. And I don't say that saying like, well, it sucks, I just live with regret. No, that's not what I mean. I like to play the game of like the sliding doors theories. Like, what if I had made this choice, or what if I had taken this job, or who knows? And there's no clear path. And so I think about all the people, like especially when it comes to the TV people, I knew a lot of people that went into it, they got out. I know of one that's still in it to this day, and she's pretty good at what she does. And so it's common. And that's another discussion in general that's very interesting. A lot of good people that have gone into the business, all three of these business. That's just three. There's more than that. And four, if you throw in the web stuff, and they end up getting out for one reason or another because it's everybody's got their own reasons. And so a lot of it, people say, well, what's the key to making it? A lot of it is attrition. I mean, how long are you, and I'm no different. And I mean, even in what I do right now, I'm like, well, what if, because this isn't a full-time deal like what I have. People think that, oh, you work at KU. And I was like, no, 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 it's not like that. I get
Yeah.
paid per game. And it's ironic that many of my jobs in this business have been full-time jobs, but then you get a break and it's actually not full-time. So you got to have another job to pay the bills. And so then even I wonder, well, how long will I do it if it continues with the same deal? And what if you never catch that really big break? And it's tough. It's not the easiest deal. It's not for the well-adjusted.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, and I'll be honest, it does require a lot of patience. Something that I really
I don't have it.
was,
I've
yeah,
never
I don't
had
either.
patience.
I still remember applying for jobs all summer after I graduated, and not just in the summer. You have to do this in advance. You can't just wait to graduate and then apply. And
Yep.
I think I maybe heard back on 2 jobs, and they weren't places I was really thrilled about. One was in South Dakota. It was a TV job, and the guy was from Wichita. I did some research on him when I saw him respond to me. And by the way, a lot of people don't do research. They just say, "Yep, I'll take it." You got to do research and just kind of get to know these people. But I asked him how much is it, because I'd be moving from Kansas City to South Dakota, and at the time my ACL was torn. And I was trying to figure out, am I going to have surgery here, wherever, what's going to happen? And he goes, about 24,000 a year. And I'm like, I don't even know what about 24,000 means when you throw in that word about. Exactly. Yeah. Just, for those who are listening to the podcast version, Jimmy just made a face, same face I made when I read that email. So,
We had a professor at KU gave us a sheet one day in class, and he goes, yeah, he was another one of those that just told it like it was. And he goes, well, as I pass this along, I just want you to know that if you have any changes of heart, I will not take any offense. If you want to go see your advisor this afternoon and maybe take a change in your course to go Stratcom, which is advertising, PR, sales, those that don't know. And those that's where the money is, sales and all that. And and I'm not, that's not, well, I mean, I guess that's me talking, but that's also my professors talking, because they used to tell me that. And as the sheet goes down the row of people, and I'm sitting back with some of my radio people in the back row, just you hear the girls like you hear people, oh shit, like just all up and down and then it gets down to, I still remember my buddy who actually works in Columbus, Ohio now, and he stuck with it too. He gets it's like, oh man. I was like, and I knew what was coming because I had already known. I see that, like, yep, okay, still not changing. And that was the TV. There was also a slot for radio, and he goes, 18 effing thousand a year. I was like, is it that high? Like, and this is 2005. And yeah, it's everyone thinks, oh, you're going to make the big bucks. So it's like, actually, I got some coupons for free pizza, or hey, we're having a pizza remote, we're going to maybe get a free one out of it. And you could look for the little things. If you're getting into it for the money, I mean, you better be patient and also hope that you get the good luck too, because not a lot of us make it.
Well, you know what I was going to say? It's just when I was at KU. So, and by the way, this was Andy Reid's first year. So the Chiefs were, I'm sure you remember this, they started 9-0, and everyone was back on that Chiefs bandwagon. And usually when a team is good, it's more enticing for someone in high school or in college to want to say, oh man, I want to be the announcer of the Chiefs or the Jayhawks and announce every game at Allen Fieldhouse. I'm sure you had classmates like this. There are a lot of people who say, I want to be the voice of the Chiefs, or I want to be the voice of the Jayhawks. It's like, dream. I don't want to kill anyone's dreams, but you got to keep in mind, there are only 32 of those jobs in the NFL. And sure, there are more Division I schools, but there's only a couple of people who announce or just Kansas sporting events in general. You're one of them, of course. it's like, don't limit yourself to just one thing. And not only that, the person to your left and to your right also wants to be the voice of the Jayhawks or the Chiefs. It's like everyone wants this one job, but I
All
think
right, we're
people,
alternating games.
you know,
All of us get hired.
if I
It's like
get
buying
sick,
season tickets. I got Iowa State. I got Texas. And
yeah, if you get sick, the other guy next to you will fill in all that good stuff. No, I mean, it doesn't work like that. And it's just, people limit themselves to just that one team they really want to be the announcer for. But people forget there's only one voice of the Chiefs. There's one voice of the Wildcats, Jayhawks, and all that. What is it like for you? And I know you alluded to this a little bit, but being at your alma mater, because it is a special place. And listen, I'll say this, KU football, you mentioned this already, they're bad. But there's also a special thing, just being able to announce football games there. I remember doing that at KGHK. It's a fun thing to do.
oh, it's my favorite.
What is
Still
it
my
like
favorite.
for you being able to work and announce games at the school you attended?
It's you talk about how all these people grow up and they want to be like I said, I'm not from Kansas, so I didn't say, oh, I used to watch Rex Walters and Greg Gurley, and one day I want to announce their games. It's like, well, no, I never thought I'd be living in Kansas one day. There were times in college, and even to this day, we'll say, can you believe I live in Kansas? And that's not a negative. I'm just saying, who would have ever thought the places you go in life and the fact that it becomes such a part of your life. And I'd be lying if I said in college, yeah, I want to work for KU one day. Well, no, I'm not. I'm out of you're out of your mind if you think I just want a job somewhere. I don't care where. I'm not limiting myself to just KU. The fact that it worked out here was just all coincidence and timing. I never and I even thought, like, who am I? Like, they would never hire me. I even joke. I was like, they're not going to bring me back. And why would they bring me back? It actually, it almost sounds very defeatist. It's more self-deprecating. I remember in Colby, I interviewed Roger Barta when Smith Center came to play. Smith Center had like an 80-something game win streak, and they'd just been featured in New York Times. And so I talked to Coach Barta, and he couldn't have been more of a classy, just humble guy. And so I'm leading him into these questions, and I say, oh, you're featured in New York Times and this and that, and you just got to be feeling really good. I'll never forget. He's like, oh, I don't know. We've had some good kids, and they work hard, and they're good students. And so I end up remembering that because I come across, oh, you work for KU. I'm like, it just so happened. I guess no one else wanted the job and they gave it to me. So that's kind of how I see things. It's like, I guess, like you sure you're going to have me back? I don't know. I'm just 6 years an interim, just filling in.
I get this question from people. I want to hear your advice, but I get this asked a lot. What is your advice for someone that wants to get into this industry? And I say, look, obviously your skills are important, and I know you'll agree with me on this. It's honestly more about who you know. That's way more important than your skills. Know. Yeah.
I mean, don't suck, obviously. Be somewhat competent at your job, but anything, I will be honest, I don't know. I cannot remember if I've ever truly gotten a job that I applied for. I take it back. Well, no, I don't think I have. Every job I've gotten has been somebody calling me or emailing me. And it doesn't mean, either it means I really suck at when it comes to the resume and the cover letter, which I hate cover letters. I loathe them. I think they're a waste of time and they're just stupid. And so it's a good thing. It's a bad thing. It's a bad thing when the system works against you, but it's a good thing when, hey, I got a phone call. Even the women's job, I technically applied, but I didn't. Calls were made on my behalf. Hey, this is a good guy. Send in your stuff for formality, because they have to go through the process for like EEO purposes. And then the GM of the network and I sat and had coffee and we had a good visit. And actually for quite a while, and we just hit it off. And I mean, that I some people can see that as a negative. I see it as a positive, because that means any day your phone could ring or something could go off and that's your job. Somebody's interested in you, and it's all networking, and that's not a bad thing. It's getting to know people and they get to know you. And sometimes it's pretty amazing when you think, wow, this person thinks highly of me and thinks I'm good. And I've been pretty lucky to cross paths with some people who think that, and even that's still not a guarantee that something's going to happen, because I've had people in the business say, "Oh, hang in there. Things are, it's." And this has been okay. This year has been an exception because hey, we're thankful to have a seat at the
Yeah.
table now. But I'm talking about it in normal years. They tell us about, you just good people tend to find places, and talent seems to rise, and it just happens. And so, but none of this would happen. I mean, I even said about Fred, my first job doesn't happen without Fred White, and I didn't do anything. I sent him an email, and that's any business, but this one especially. And I've been lucky to have some good people, and still do, and still have good people that I now consider not just colleagues but friends.
Yeah.
And to me, that's a lot cooler, not because, oh, this person can help me get a job. It's just nice to have friends, and especially when you need advice or you need a pick me up. And that's been pretty great.
Now, you haven't been limited to just the women's basketball. You and I, we were talking before we went live and recorded. You said you've done a little bit of football, and you've done some baseball in the past as well. Talk about that experience, being able to do, the football games, a men's basketball game. What's that experience been like, trying to be able to expand and do more of these things?
Well, in the year of the Rona, we were told to be expecting weird things. And Brian Haney tells me before the season, "Hey, if something happens, you're number two. You're John Moxon." I was like, "Okay, Lance." And I remember how that movie ended, right? And I was like, and they had the incident in October where he was thankfully, and I told Brian, I said, "Look, I I appreciate that I would get an opportunity, but I don't want anybody getting sick, and especially." And um I lost my grandparents within 3 days apart to COVID, and they damn near raised me. So I refused to root for that to give me an opportunity. And so thankfully he tested negative, but Brian had to quarantine. And so they give me a call. I was actually watching a women's practice because it was one of the first practices, and Brandon Schneider is always gracious enough to let me come out anytime I want, because I don't live in Lawrence, obviously. So it's not like I'll just pop on over and watch practice. Like I got to make arrangements to not be at work. And so he had me down, and I'm getting a call in real time. I'm getting texts and calls from the GM of the network. Well, stand by. We might need you. Oh, we might need you to be on standby in case something does. Finally, I get a call. Can you do the game Saturday? I was like, yes. So this is actually a Thursday. Well, then we need you here Friday morning to get swab tested, and then you're in. And thankfully, Brian had already been preparing me in case that was the case. And so
Oh, that's awesome.
I had boards and everything, and I had actually been watching through the ESPN Plus deal, West Virginia's game from the previous week. So I wasn't completely blinded, and so I ended up calling that game. And actually, one of the last calls was Puka Williams' kick return for a touchdown. So on Monday, Josh Klingler texted me. It was like, "What do you say about Puka to piss him off that he's leaving?" And so that was this last. Yeah, so I guess it was my fault, but so I got to do that game, and I was very thankful because I work with David Lawrence during the women's games. And so I told him, I said, well, to get a chance to call ball with you for one game, I was very grateful. We had a tremendous spotter who was a big a football fan, a KU football fan, as there is, flying from Chicago, and he was just fantastic. We could have put a headset on him, and obviously we had the whole crew there except Brian, and Steve Kincaid does such a great job as an engineer. And so I literally just have to, they make it easy for me to do that. All I have to do is to follow Bob Davis's 3 rules that he told me: get in and out of break on time, make sure you honor all the sponsors, and don't say the F word on the air. If you can do those things, you'll stay employed. And actually there's your rule for all the young people, your 3 rules that'll guarantee you at least employment in your career. And it's still advice that pays off to this day. So anyway, I got to do that game, and that was great because I this goes back to what you said about aspiring to do this or that or work for your alma mater. And I said at the end of that game that, well, I was thankful to sit in Bob Davis's chair for a week. And it's nothing against Brian, because Brian would agree. Bob did that forever.
Yeah.
Bob and Max together, especially. Yep. So I was sitting in Bob's chair, and honestly, you could go further and say I was sitting in Max Falkenstein's chair for one game, and that I was like, well, I hope I didn't stink up the joint. And David told me that Bob gave a endorsement, a little nod of approval, and so that's all I needed. And I did an okay job. Okay. The best part about all the older radio guys, they still listen. So yeah. I know that the people are listening, and he's not the only one. I was very lucky to get to know Tom Hedrick when I was in school, and he was also a great coach and teacher.
Tom was a great mentor of mine.
Oh, he also taught me the appreciation of ice cream. So I loved Tom. But
wait, hold on. What? Tell this story. The appreciation. He never told me this.
He, that man will always get an ice cream. I love when we would go have lunch, and it was always so simple because we'd go to a Wendy's in West Lawrence, and I always loved sitting down with him. And even when we moved back up here, I tried to make it up there, and I haven't. Obviously, this past, there's no way I was going to take any chances and anything like that. But I still think of him often, and he's influenced and mentored so many people, and I'm one of them that he helped out over the years. And so he's someone that I would also, I would go to his house in college and play a tape for him, and like Fred, no BS. If you sucked, he told it like it was. As a gentleman, always a gentleman.
Yes,
but he was very honest. And when I got further along in college, he goes in front of all my friends at the KAB thing. He goes, when I first heard you, took off his glasses, and I thought, oh boy, I don't know if he's got it. I don't know. He's going to need a lot of work. And he goes, you've done a really good job getting better and better. And I'm proud of you. And you're ready to go into the, and so, but anyway, so that's one example of, all the older guys that get a chance to listen. But then in December, we had a schedule crossover, which is rare because this doesn't happen, but weird is the new normal. And so football went down to Lubbock to do, and I was ready to go do another football game, but the Texans. So you're ready to go, and regardless of the record and stuff like that, but also I'm like, they're not going to not do the men's game. I mean, but they asked me to do that. So you're always honored to cover that program, and Bill Self, who has been he has been as amazing to me and everyone else as he was when I was a student. And he doesn't forget anybody. That man he doesn't forget a name, a face, and just first class gentleman all the way around. And so to get a chance to call one of the games for his program, and it ended up being a really good game that went down to the end. And there was a handful of people that were just family and friends because they still weren't allowing fans. So it didn't have the true feel, but as far as the environment, but the game sure was played at a high level. And so got a chance to work with Greg for a game. And I had a couple people ask me, you guys ever worked together before? It's like, no, I mean, I know Greg, I've known Greg for years. And, says, well, you guys sounded like you've been together for a while. Like, and I went back and I listened, I was like, that's true. He seemed to have a feel for, we never stepped on each other, and it was just a seamless transition from one to the other. And just I was never, and people thought, well, you'd be nervous. And well, two things. One, no, you're never nervous because it's what you do. And two, and not to put a downer, I referenced how my grandparents both died from COVID. They were dying that weekend. He died Friday. This is December the 4th. The game was on the 5th, and my grandma died Sunday the 6th, 10 minutes before I went on air. And
oh wow.
Before I left, my wife told me, because my aunt had said it's not long. So that's how my Sunday mornings started. And my wife said, turn your Bluetooth off so it doesn't go off on your watch. Turn your vibrate off. Don't even look at your phone. And I made a small mistake at halftime, and I was checking something else, and I saw my cousin. I didn't read the text, but I didn't need to. My cousin doesn't text me that often. I knew it's not good. And that was at halftime, and we're about to go back on, and David looks at me. He goes, are you okay? And I take off my headset. I said, I think my effing grandma is dead. And he goes, you know that for a fact? And I was like, no, I just have a feeling. And she did. So,
Okay. I'm
so
sorry to hear that.
all this within one weekend,
Yeah.
and the thing is, I get called by Mark Tuttle, the GM, on Thursday to do the game on Saturday. And I actually have a women's game calling on a TV screen at the football stadium. So I go take a shower to get ready to drive to Lawrence to go do that. And I get out of the shower, and my aunt texts that my grandma wants to see me. So I got a chance to, you got to understand, I was so close to them. They were basically my parents in many ways, especially my grandma. She was my mom. And, she said, so I got to say goodbye to them via Zoom, which is absolutely as freaking brutal as you imagine it is. So within a 30-minute span, you're told you're doing a men's game, not on student radio, but the real deal, which is a big deal.
Yeah.
You're saying goodbye to your grandparents. You go do a game. You wake up Friday morning that your grandpa's dead. You call the men's game on Saturday. And a lot of that's maybe why I did a decent job of it, because I needed a distraction desperately. I was not doing well. And for a few hours that Saturday, because she could have gone during that. So same thing. My wife says, turn your Bluetooth off, and I even told people, like the people at Learfield, if you need anything, here's the number of my engineer on site. I can't explain, but I can't look at my phone during the game. And
Yeah.
probably thought, well, prima donna doesn't want to look at this, so he's too important. And do the game. Next day, thing with my and I couldn't go home. Still haven't been home. And so I'm about to be fully shot up. So maybe by this summer I can go sit at their grave and eat lunch with them. But yeah, that's a lot of stuff in one weekend, but that's part of my year. And for a lot of things that were taken from me, you still got opportunities out of it. And your job in that point is to make the most of them. And I like to think that I did. And, for that, I'm thankful.
I'm sorry to hear that, man. I mean,
Yeah, it
props to
does
you.
suck. I'm not going to lie. I mean, that's, I try to, I'm doing better now. I'm doing a
Good.
I thought I would, but you got to understand, my grandpa was a Korean War POW. He would tell me, get over it, get on with your life. Life goes on. I lived a good life. So I try to think of that like, okay, I could have a pity party. And I really wasn't doing well. And this is right before Christmas too, on top of it. So,
Yeah.
which was always such a big deal in our family and in their house. And so, I lay, there's an old poem that Marv Levy recited one time, going deep now. And,
Yeah.
I don't remember it verbatim, but he said, uh, I'd have to look it up, but it's easy to talk about. I'm battered, but I will fight again. Just let me lie down and bleed a while. And then I'll rise and I'll fight it. And that's kind of how I was, like, just let me lay and bleed a while, and then I'll, get up and keep going. And so overall, I'm doing better when it comes to that. But that's, I can still hear him today, get over it, get on with life and keep living. Cause that's what he would say. Like, no sense being sad. They had a good run, and you got to celebrate the living and keep going for everyone else. And so that's part of the reason why I felt during that time it was important for me to work, and it was easy enough for me to work because that's what you do. And they're a lot tougher than I ever was.
I remember, and it wasn't, a death with someone I knew, but I remember when I was working at 610, I just had a really bad day, man. And I don't even remember what happened, but I just remember going into work thinking, I'm about to, co-host a night shift, and am I going to be able to just give this good level of energy on the radio? And you mentioned this just now. You said you needed a distraction, and you felt like maybe that's why you did. So you liked how you did announce those games. Working in media, and specifically on air, like radio or TV, there's this weird thing where being on air can kind of distract you. Because I remember having that bad day, and I was on the radio for 3 hours, and it actually felt good. Now, it didn't take away the bad day, obviously, or whatever you were dealing with, but having that kind of job, it is kind of a nice distraction with whatever you're dealing with if you're having a rough day or a rough week.
We can understand why athletes perform and have some of their best outings when they have you think of Brett Favre when his dad died and then he went out the next
Yep.
night and torched the Raiders. You understand when they go, why, how they could play so well, because they needed a release. They needed a few hours to not think about stuff. And so their focus ends up so much on what they're doing that they forget everything else.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. I've always thought it was crazy how Brett Favre did that too. And I was young at the time, so I didn't really understand the idea of a necessary distraction. But looking back at that moment, it's like you can kind of understand and certainly respect that. How are you doing on time, by the way? You got time for maybe?
I
Okay.
I got plenty of time.
Well, I wanted to ask you because you have done some Kansas sporting events. I know and listen, men's basketball, huge deal, of course. I mean, you don't need me to tell you that. You know this just as well as I do, just as well as anybody. But um, a lot of people have complained about some KU games, some KU sporting events, especially men's basketball. They've been exclusively on ESPN Plus. And I'm sure you heard this with the NFL's new deal. Part of it is in 2024, I believe, they're leaving DirecTV, which is where Sunday Ticket is a part of. And there's speculation, this is not confirmed, but there's speculation with their new deal with Amazon Prime having the Thursday night games on there. And they're also with ESPN Plus. People don't know the details, but there's speculation that Sunday Ticket will now be on ESPN Plus. Listen, I'm a huge UFC fan, and so I hated the idea of them going to ESPN Plus because you got to pay for that, $5.99 a month or whatever it is per month, and on top of that, you got to order the $70 paper. The price keeps going up every year, and now you're seeing KU sporting events, some Big 12 games on there. Now the NFL is gradually moving towards that realm. A lot of people they hate these online streaming especially for sports. What do you make of that? As someone who announces these games at KU.
Unfortunately, way of the future. And, for better or worse. And I try to think of those that, I just picture my dad being like, I can't watch this damn game. Oh, I won't watch anyway. And there will be a segment of people, but then you think of people younger, definitely younger than me, but your age, younger, and the next, people that are teenagers right now, and this is going to become their thing. And it's never going to be a smooth transition. And it doesn't mean that people have to like it. On one hand, you need to remember your fans. Don't cut them out completely. But at the same time, I get that we're going that direction. The thing that's tough with the NFL is the NFL has always been ahead of the game, and they, go back to what Pete Rozelle came up with in the 60s about having every game on, and it was regional. And then when they did away with the blackout rules later on, in the, I think 70s or 80s, where, you could watch in your home market at least, it's always been available. The NFL's always been the most accessible, which is why a team in Kansas City, even though they have a dynamic quarterback, that's not my point, it's still a smaller market. And that's why a team in Kansas City can still bring big ratings. Oh, it's Kansas City. Who cares what? Green Bay is a tiny place, but they have a national following. Obviously, the Chiefs have, I would say they have kind of a national following. And if they don't, then I don't know where all these fans come from when the visiting places. And it's not even just now. It was like that when I was a kid, when Marty was coaching them. And so market size doesn't matter as much. Whereas in other leagues, it does matter. Oh, they'll only go play in this town or that town. The NFL has always been great about that you can be a stud in Los Angeles just as much as you can be a stud in Pittsburgh or Seattle, and part of that's because of the accessibility and visibility of the league. Will this change us in any way? I don't know, because at the end of the day, football's big business. It'll always be. I laugh and think, oh, ratings are going down, this, that. It still trashes everybody in the ratings. It's still going to be like, that's not going away. It's still as big a slice of Americana as there is. And there's nothing like, one of my good friends used to always call it the church of football. And that's what every Sunday is like. And I don't have to tell you, I'm sure in your family, the traditions that go back to when you're a kid, you can just see it now. Like you can go back to be a kid and what it was like waking up and you turn on the pregame show, not even the pregame, but I'm talking about like local pregame at 8 a.m. just you going. I mean, the network pregame is already you're there, but when I was a kid, church was coordinated around the Cowboys schedule. And if they played at noon, we had to go at 9 and there was no debate and you can get your butt out of bed. And otherwise, you're not going to watch the game. And if the game was at 3, then it was different. Like, everything was coordinated around those games. I remember growing up as a kid in San Antonio, watching the Jimmy Johnson show at like 9 a.m. when we get home, or 10 a.m. when we get home. And you had the Jimmy Johnson show, of course, you had the Jerry Jones show, and then you get to the network pregame, and then it was a game. It's like this whole big event. And I always used to say, and I still say, that's the thing about football is that even in college, like everything stops for one day. And that's what was great in college, for example. You could have all these things to do with school and homework, projects, all this, all this stress. And on Saturday, it just stops and you hang out with your friends and you act all silly and you go to a football game, and then you can get back to that on Sunday. Well, with the NFL, same type concept. Sunday is, I got such a big week ahead, or, rough week. I'm dreading the week. Yeah, that doesn't matter right now. It's Sunday. And if your team happens to be good, it's even better for you. Like, it's like people in this area right now, their lives and everything revolves around their team because they're in a special time period where they're going to be in the upper echelon of the league and be able to legitimately compete for championships for years to come with the core that they've assembled and obviously the quarterback that they have. And so you're going to find a way to watch your team at the end of the day. And I think that's where it's going to be. And the key thing you said is the years, that starting in that year and then looking 10 years down the road. Look, who would have thought it would be how it was going to be when it was in 2005 when we got to this point. And so what it's going to be like in 2035 is just, it's different.
Well, a lot of people have been recently complaining. So are you a big fan of the Marvel movies or Star Wars?
Star Wars, yes, but I'll admit I haven't seen a lot of the Marvel movies.
Okay, well, I don't know if you heard about that. So do you have Disney Plus?
I do.
Okay, so obviously, I'm sure you watched The Mandalorian, which is exclusively on Disney Plus.
Actually, it's on the to-watch list.
Okay, well, I'm not saying anything, but the first 2 seasons, I'll just no judging on my end, but The Mandalorian, it just like you should. I would be happy if you left this podcast and started watching that. That's how great it is.
I mean, the weather is crappy today. It would probably.
But here's my point. It's just they recently announced Black Widow, which is supposed to be the next Marvel movie for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They said it'll be in theaters, which not a lot of people are comfortable going back to theaters, even though it's going to be in July. People are optimistic things are going to be back to normal then. But Disney announced that you can buy it on Disney Plus for $30. And, I don't know how many movies you have been able to watch, like new movies through streaming services. HBO Max has taken well advantage over that. I know Disney Plus had Mulan, which I think was the first movie that was supposed to be in theaters that ended up not going to theaters and went straight to streaming. And there was Borat, the second Borat movie on Prime. I mean, that was a huge hit. So we're kind of seeing this now, not just with sports, but we're seeing this with movies too, where we're gradually kind of moving towards that direction with online streaming. And again, people don't like it. A lot of people had a lot of complaints about when they heard the Black Widow news, but that is kind of where we're going. And I know this pandemic has created a lot of weird things, but that's kind of where we're going at this point.
Look at it this way, though. With all these new things, will create opportunities. And when you go back, circling back around, it'll create more job opportunities for people who are 12, 13 years old that maybe want to go into this business, and it's not completely tied to the same. So I tend to see it all for the positive. So the 3 rules for broadcasting, I said, and then learn a little bit of everything, because if you can put more stuff on your resume that makes you more viable, then you're doing well. And then obviously, who you know.
I think it's interesting you mentioned that, because you talked about how this pandemic, it's not ideal, but the reality is some of these things happen, and this is what allowed you to be able to get some opportunities doing football and men's basketball. I'm sure you remember the Kevin Keatsman incident where he made that comment about Andy Reid's son, and so he was no longer there. I mean, look, it's not ideal to have it go down that way, but somebody, which ended up being Jason Anderson, that became his open door to be able to go through and get that opportunity. Because a lot of people don't realize, and I think for Seren Petro too, because he finally got that afternoon shift that I think he's been wanting a long time. Is it kind of weird looking back and saying like, again, not ideal, especially for you. I know it's been personal for you, but this pandemic of all things has kind of opened the door to maybe be able to branch out and have these other opportunities.
I mean, honestly, that's the best thing you can do in the whole deal. Like, look, the whole thing sucks as a whole.
Yeah.
But if you can find a situation to take advantage of an opportunity that's created, then at least you did. Because when things return to normal, then maybe you get more opportunities yourself, and other people will continue with their own deals, and that's all you can do. Look, if you don't take advantage of it, someone else will. So
Yeah,
if an
that's
opportunity
true.
is created for you, it would be in your best interest to take advantage of it.
All right, man. Well, listen, before you go, obviously people can catch you on Jayhawk IMG. Am I saying that correctly? Jayhawk IMG or KUIMG?
That's Jayhawk. Yeah.
Jayhawk IMG. Okay, I want to make sure. So, if you live in the
It's now
Midwest,
officially the Jayhawk Sports Network from Learfield IMG College.
well, there you go. Check out your local listing if you want to check out Jimmy, listen to him live. Other than that, man, how can people connect with you? How can they check out your work and all you do?
They can go to jimmychavez.com, which is just how it's spelled. JIMMYCHAVEZ.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, congratulations to you and everything you have accomplished and where you've gotten to. And I'm sure, you'll continue growing. You've done such a great job. You've been so nice to me, and I'm a bigger fan of you as a person. Thank you so much for making time for this podcast, man. Stay safe. Good luck with everything, and hope to hear more of your games on the air.
Well, you're a good man. Congratulations to everything you've done, and I'm proud of you. And as a once great former Kansas coach said, keep sawing wood.
I appreciate that. Jimmy Chavez, announcer
I dropped the mic, but it's connected.
Yes. Announcer for Jayhawks IMG. Check him out. Good stuff. Appreciate you guys listening to this episode of Farzcast. We'll be back. For those of you listening on Facebook Live, we'll be back in about an hour and a half. Freddie Coleman from ESPN Radio will join us. If you're listening to the podcast version, there'll be two different versions of the episode, two different postings, basically, two different uploads. So be patient for that. They'll be up very shortly. Other than that, appreciate you guys listening. I'll talk to you guys later. Take care.